Welcome into Texans Today, everybody. I'm your host, Jeremy Chuggs, and next to me, the man, the myth, the legend, Aaron Wilson, the People's Insider. Obviously, if you follow the Houston Texans, if you know anything about the Houston Texans, you know about my man, Aaron Wilson. How are we feeling today, Aaron?
Oh, we're doing great, Jeremy. Yeah, thanks for having me on. Yeah, it's been a good day. I was over at NRG Stadium earlier, and it's good to get out of the house for a little bit, get off the phone, and talk to Nick Caserio. He had his annual pre-draft press conference, which all teams are required to have someone out there to discuss the draft. That's part of the league's effort to promote the NFL draft, which they make a lot of money on. It's a one of the real tentpole of the offseason events. But yeah, it was fun, and it was good to see everybody, see some of my friends in the media, and just kind of hang out a little bit over at NRG for a greater part of an hour.
Yeah,
Nick.
If we know anything about Nick Caserio, he probably gave you everything that you wanted. He told you everything about the Houston Texans and revealed all the Texans draft plans coming up in 2025.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Right? I've got the whole blueprint right here, Jeremy. It's all up here. Mm-hmm. Memorized the whole board, and yeah, I've got it all figured out. It's funny because every team does this. We were talking before the show. So a friend of mine that's a general manager, he will get all of the transcripts and look for all of the press coverage, the interpretation of the general manager's comments. And they don't take it as, anything like it's a tacit admission. If somebody says, hey, we could use an offensive lineman, but they take it into account. Just like they quiz all of the players that they bring in for visits. They ask them, well, where else have you been? Who'd you work out for? Who do you get phone calls from? And the players generally comply with that information. And they make charts of this stuff trying to figure out, well, what percentage of the players that visit them in this round do they actually draft? Things like that. So there's analytics for everything. And they're trying to figure stuff out. It's an information business. And, one of Nick's final answers of the press conference, I thought was one of the more illuminating ones about looking at mock drafts that actually have real information and which mock drafters actually talk to the teams and get a feel for this is the direction. These are some players we like. And he puts more stock into those, obviously, than, what most people call mock guesses. And, I'm not a big fan of doing mock drafts. And it's just not really something in my journalism career I've thought, really put a lot of credence into. But it's interesting to hear Nick say, he looks at mock drafts and he likes to look at that sort of thing. So, yeah, it's interesting. I mean, it was a good conversation with him about many things, including Tank Dell injury update and their philosophy on contract extensions. And he took some tough questions. I thought fair questions, but tough about the offensive line and the investment, the resources, and how it hasn't worked so far. And, some of the moves they've tried to make. But, he said I don't think he was ultra sensitive about it, but he, kind of made light of, hey, you guys, every time I make a mistake, you guys pointed out. But yeah, I mean, it's a 50-50 thing, the draft, and so is free agency sometimes. You make a lot of moves. Some of them work and some of them don't. And I would say, he's got a pretty good hit percentage, especially lately. He's kind of riding a heater at the crap stable as far as the moves he's making. They're working. Some things don't work, like a Kenyon Green, but then he, admits the mistake and moves on from it. But yeah, my takeaways from Nick, Nick was in a good mood. He was calm. He was confident. I didn't sense the tension that maybe he had a few years ago when he was doing a draft press conference and seemed, a little bit more guarded or a little more sensitive about things. He seemed to be in a good mood, and, they're coming off 2 division titles, so why not be in a good mood?
Yeah, much easier and much more calming presence whenever you're picking at 25 rather than at pick 2 for Nick Caserio a couple of years back. Obviously, coming up on the show, we have my draft targets. I have my top 10 guys that I think the Texans could pick at 25. I'll divulge my list to Aaron Wilson and see what he has to say about my top 10 list.
All right.
And then we'll have a Q&A. So if y'all want to get queued up, I have some questions that I took from Twitter earlier. But if you want to get on the show, you got to use hashtag Texans, or you can super chat to get on the show. Our second segment, me and Aaron are going to answer all of your questions. And this is one of my favorite questions to ask at the beginning of every show, Aaron, just because I know on YouTube and just, on the internet in general, Texans fans, they spread far and wide. We know you're in Houston at the home base. You're at 281-832 hanging out in there. But everybody in the comment section, let me know where are you watching from, and make sure you're getting those questions in for me and my man Aaron Wilson. I just want to go back to the Nick Caserio presser really quick. of you talked about him, and then you talked about a lot of the draft visits that have come through so far. And I've seen, the new Jags GM, he's kind of in the philosophy of, I don't really like top 30 visits. What is your thought on, I feel like the Texans take advantage of it more than most teams of bringing guys into the facility and having a ton of visits. What are your thoughts, or what have you been hearing about all these draft visits that the Texans have taken this offseason so far?
Yeah, it's a great question, Jeremy. When you look at how the Texans utilize draft visits, it's a information-seeking exercise, but it's also something where they benefit from being in the great state of Texas and being in this Houston area, because some of the visitors, they don't count against the 30 limit, meaning they're local. So Donovan Jackson from Episcopal High School, he's from Cyprus. He was here today at the Texans training facility, along with Kenneth Grant from Michigan in the All-American defensive tackle. So while Grant counts against the 30 because he's from Indiana, Merrillville, Indiana, you don't have one counting for Jackson. And it's the same thing with Upton Stout from North Shore High School, Western Kentucky corner, who starred at the Senior Bowl. Or looking at Matthew Golden, he had a solo visit the same day that they celebrated Derek Stingley Jr.'s $90 million extension. So he was there. I reported on that. And it kind of goes all down the line. Jaden Blue, same high school as Matt Golden. Klein Kane, obviously a very fast football team there, and both Longhorns. So they had both those guys in. And you can then have more than the 30. So there's a surplus. But let's say you're from the Green Bay Packers. Okay, well, it's not as talent rich. There's not as many players. Why the Rams don't do it is the same reason the Jaguars don't do it. So the Rams are going to have a thing where they're going to, basically their visit's going to be to visit Upton Stout. So they're going to go spend time with him and fly in to Houston and see him. And he's been to the Texans. He's been to the Dolphins, the 49ers. So he's been on 30 visits, but that's a way to really have more exposure to the guys. And you hope that it won't leak out, I guess. In the case of Upton, I don't think it's that big a deal or big secret, but he disclosed to me that he has a Rams meeting. But you notice a lot of the Jaguars ones aren't out there because they're not bringing them into the facility. And I guess they're telling these agents and other people not to leak them. In some cases, the players are posting on Instagram, where they are. So that happens all the time. Like Caleb Johnson, you notice that.
Yeah, with Grey
Zabel. And then we're pretty sure it was Grey Zabel. And guess what? A couple of texts, and I was able to figure out it actually was Grey Zabel walking through NRG Stadium, and he's a potential target for them, probably on your list, I would think. Maybe. We'll see. When I see your list, I can't wait to see your list. But Grey Zabel, someone that could make some sense for the Texans. So visits are an opportunity for them to really get to know these guys a lot better than you would in 15 minutes at the combine. And you have a chance to maybe ask them more in depth about something. What if there was a off-field incident or an injury or maybe some family background stuff that a team was interested in knowing about and maybe wanted to have that conversation. Maybe that one question is going to take up a lot of time and they may have wanted to do more research. In the case of drafting and making this huge investment in, say, in a quarterback like CJ Stroud or Will Anderson Jr., yes, they both visited. So they generally, with their high draft picks, those guys make a trip. But then I don't know if this is big news, but I'll say it here. So a lot of people have asked me, Emeka Egbuka, why didn't he visit the Texans? They had such a great meeting with him. They already know a lot about him. And he's not getting a lot of trips because there isn't a lot of questions. Sometimes a visit doesn't necessarily mean you're popular. Sometimes it's because they have questions. They want to know more about you. But the nugget I'll drop here, not a big one, but Emeka had a Zoom meeting with the Texans. So they use Zoom meetings too to increase their level of information with them. So Jaden Blue, he had a Zoom with the Texans and a visit. So he had both of those kind of exposures to the Texans and to their coaches and scouting department. So I think everybody uses these differently. I can tell you that a lot of teams, they use them kind of as a recruiting tool for undrafted free agents. So sometimes if you see kind of a weird name, like some of the ones I've reported on, like the Chiefs, one with Central Arkansas's running back. That's just to kind of make him want to be a Chief. And you bring him in, and the Ravens have done this for years, so they have in guys that I think will be undrafted or late rounders. Make them want to come to your, kind of like recruiting. It's very similar to that.
Yeah, and I noticed that with, especially some of the linebackers the Texans met with. They met with the kid from Jackson State. They met with the USC linebacker.
They did not meet with the Jackson State guy.
They did not meet with him.
It's not my report, but I don't want to say their guy's name, but it's inaccurate. He did not visit. It's and this happens every year where I check on stuff and people think that's on the list. No, Alan Walker is not on the draft 30 visit.
As Abraham Lincoln once said, you can't believe everything you read on the internet, and that's why we have guys like Aaron Wilson.
You got to always confirm information. So yeah, just because someone else says it doesn't mean that it actually is true. So I always have to, regardless of who it is, if someone else has reported something, I have to check it out, and then I have to decide: is somebody telling me the truth, or are they, BSing me about, no, he was a secret visit? No. I'm very confident that he did not visit. So, he did visit some other teams, and he's a good player. But yeah, no, not with the Texans.
Not with the Texans. But I do think not a surprise that the Texans are probably going to take an offensive lineman in this year's class. We actually have a super chat, somebody asking about that here in a second. But while everybody's in the comment section, 130 people, make sure you're hitting that like button so we get more people here in the live show. And I want to hear from you. Confidence level in the Texans drafting an offensive lineman this season. Scale it 1 to 10, because I was, doing a little homework. I was looking at guys that Nick Caserio has drafted so far on the offensive line, and I mean, the track record's not great, right? Like, the jury's still out on Juice Scruggs. The jury's still out on Jarrett Patterson. We obviously traded away Kenyon Green, and there's really nobody else of note that the Texans have drafted besides, I guess, Blake Fisher to give you any confidence in this front office taking an offensive lineman. So let me know, scale it 1 to 10 as we get into our first super chat of the day. Joshua Stanley wants to ask you, do you get the impression the Texans will look at trading up for the right offensive line player? What do you think about this one, Aaron?
That's a great question, Joshua. Yeah, to answer the first question that's on the screen, I would go above 10. I'm going to go to 1,000.
Oh, wow.
And there's even a scenario I've been told where they may double up and draft a couple of offensive linemen this draft. So don't be surprised if they do that. And I would say, to your point of, misses, sure, Kenyon Green, Juice Scruggs, we're still evaluating. It looks like he's a better guard than a center. Blake Fisher didn't look very good in the Chiefs playoff game. He is a rookie. He's very young. That is someone where, you hope that he makes a leap in year 2. But it looks like they're already making plans, right? With these veteran linemen like Cam Robinson and Trent Brown and Titus Howard can play right tackle easily. So is Blake guaranteed a starting job? No. The impression of trading up, it would just depend what's sliding to them. I don't think they need to, though, Joshua. What's going to be there at 25, in my opinion, you might not have Kelvin Banks, but I think you would have Tyler Booker. I think that Grey Zabel from North Dakota State will still be on the board. I think Josh Simmons, for some reason, I just have this hunch he's going to get overdrafted. He's going to be gone. Donovan Jackson, I'm not sure if he's really worthy of the 25th pick. I think he's more of the early second rounder, in my opinion. Would it shock me if they picked him? No, it wouldn't. But I don't think that's necessarily a great way to do this. I think they'd be better off getting a talented tackle that can play guard while they have Cam Robinson hold down the spot.
Yeah.
So that's one area they could go with. But, what's the big difference between, say, Banks and some of these other guys? And there's a bunch of them. And I reported on this about Armonte Ursery from University of Minnesota, the Big Ten Offensive Lineman of the Year. He's there in round 2.
He's climbing.
Anthony Belton, I think, is there in round 2. So could they then do something different? And we get more into this, but what about with this weak receiver class? What about getting one of the more highly regarded receivers first and waiting for the offensive line? I think that's a less likely scenario, but it's one that you can't rule out. What's left at receiver in round 2? Is it Trey Harris from Mississippi who visited? Is it someone like Kyle Williams from Washington State who visited? So do you wait on the receiver, looking for that third starter with Tank Dell unlikely to play this season? I think that's an interesting scenario for them, but more than likely, I wouldn't trade up. I would stay where they are. If they could trade back, that would be better.
I agree. I think obviously, and I don't think it's a unpopular opinion for the Texans to not pick in round 1 of this year's draft class and maybe acquire some extra second or third round picks. And just a quick reminder, I see some more questions in the comment section. Make sure you're using hashtag Texans. I have super producer Jack Lauderay pressing the 1s and 2s. Shout out to Jack back there. He can only pull your questions if you use hashtag Texans or if you super chat like Joshua did. So if you want to ask Aaron a question, in your comment, use hashtag Texans, and we'll answer that. Like Texans Prod right there, he's asking, do you actually think we can get Teteroa McMillan? I mean, he was in that Kuiper and Yates mock draft, falling to 25. Aaron, I don't see a world where that's possible, though, right?
Right. I mean, there have been a few whispers about him, about lack of pure speed and other things, or what's his attitude like. It really hasn't been anything very specific other than, you kind of wish the 40 times a little bit better, but I never really see him have problems separating, and he could just jump over you. He's so big. I don't see him lasting that long. I'd be a little surprised. I think Matthew Golden, I heard today, I got some information that he may go between 10 and 20. The receiver that's probably left that's of the higher graded ones, or I guess the cluster, would be Luther Burden and Emeka Egbuka. So there's a couple of wide receivers there. Whether I consider them more talented than maybe the offensive linemen, is just a debate. But I kind of think the lean would be, if Matthew Golden's gone, if McMillan's gone, do you really feel like you should draft the receiver then, or should you wait and should you get the offensive lineman? I mean, you can talk yourself into anything.
Yeah. But
I think the way the board may fall out, that you just go ahead and wait on a receiver. I mean, they can line up right now. Nick, I think, was trying to portray it. For anybody who thinks that they're desperate for a receiver, know that they could line up. And that's true. They could.
Yeah.
They certainly could with like Justin Watson as the third receiver, or give John Mechie the third another chance. I mean, I don't think anybody's thinking Braxton Berrios is more than special teams and some depth. And, same thing with Xavier Hutchinson. But, yeah, they'll come out of this draft. I mean, if they come out with any of those receivers I was mentioning, like the receiver from Mississippi or the receiver from Washington State, and if they did that in round 2 or even got a receiver in round 3, I think Texans fans will be pretty happy about those outcomes. But, we'll see. Other teams like those guys too.
Yeah, and it's funny you're mentioning this because I actually made it the live poll. If you haven't voted yet in the comment section, go up and vote. I asked the chat, Aaron, what position will the Texans draft first? 53% say offensive line, 40% say wide receiver, and then the other 6% is between running back, tight end, and a defensive player.
Interesting.
And Nick Caserio said today, we're not drafting for need. We don't need to draft any particular position. Obviously, he could be playing some 40 chess with us right now, but could they maybe take a different position? I don't know, but I do find it interesting, his comments, and then the perception from the fan base. Okay, there's 140 people in the chat, 46 likes. Once we get to 50 likes, we need 4 more likes in the chat. We're going to do our first segment coming up. I'm going to reveal my top 10 candidates for the Texans at pick 25. Aaron right here, he's going to react to all of them, tell me how dumb I am for all the guys that I think the Texans are going to take at pick 25. But we'll get some inside knowledge from Aaron on, boots on the ground, what he thinks the Texans could do at pick 25, and some, popular prospects that have been mocked a ton. I know Nick Caserio said he doesn't love mocks, but been mocked a ton to the Texans this year. Looks like we just sailed past through 50 likes. Jack, are we good to go for the first segment? Okay. Awesome. We're going to get into our first segment here right now. My top 10 targets for the Texans at pick 25. Welcome into Texans Today. I'm your host, Jeremy Chuggs, and coming up on today's show, the top candidates to be picked at pick 25 with special guest Aaron Wilson, the NFL insider, the People's Insider. Aaron Wilson, I'm going to break down my top 10 guys, and you're going to maybe, tell me how smart I am, or if you hate the guys that I think the Texans could possibly pick at 25. You ready to go, Aaron?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right, first up, I'm going to give you some curveballs. First up, Walter Nolen, defensive tackle from Ole Miss. I've been seeing anywhere he's a top 10 talent, or he could maybe even slide all the way to the Eagles pick at 32. What is your thought on the Texans possibly taking Nolen if he's there at 25?
I think it's a low percentage one. I know how disruptive he is. I think he's going to really be off the board because he's a talent. He's very explosive. There are some concerns about, just consistency and maturity, but I think he's an ascending player. Love the production, love how explosive he is. I think he'll be a really disruptive interior player. And, it's worth noting they have not ignored the defensive line with the visits with Kenneth Grant, with all the Texas A&M guys, Nick Skirton, Shamari Stewart, Shamari Turner, and Texas's Alfred Collins. So, they've had at least 5 players into NRG Stadium that line up in the trenches playing defensive line. But, I think Walter's a nice player. I think Carolina is a possibility for him. It's one of the trips I reported on for Walter. And, I just don't know if he's going to be a Texan. I would say low percentage that Walter Nolen, or that they would even go, unless their board gets wiped out. I think Kenneth Grant might be more their style to get a bigger guy. But, Nolen's interesting. I mean, he's a playmaker. Love the player, love the upside, the athleticism. But, I just think they've got some other things they need to do. And like you said, they never want to draft for need. That's why they set it up this way, where at least they can line up with the offensive line and receiver. But they're still the biggest needs on the team. And I would rank D-tackle probably third. There's some possibility even that, who knows, they could do some business with Tim Settle Jr. And they've already got Mario Edwards Jr. under contract for 2026. Sure, Sheldon Rankins is probably a 1 year at this point. But, they have the opportunity to keep some other defensive linemen. I think that they got to get a D-tackle in this draft. It's so deep. But maybe they could even wait till 3rd round, 4th round to get one of those defensive tackles.
All right, next up on my board, maybe you don't like Walter Nolen, but this name has been circulating a ton. Omarion Hampton from North Carolina. And Aaron, I can't lie, I might crash out if the Texans take a running back in round 1. Maybe talk me off the ledge here. Does it make sense, or is there even a possibility that the Texans go with the running back in round 1?
Right. That was one of the questions I asked, not maybe necessarily that specifically to Nick Caserio. You kind of need to speak in generalities if you're going to get an answer other than kind of a quick answer. So he likes the running back room. He likes they have obviously Joe Mixon, they have Damian Pierce, and they have for special teams Dario Mawale. But Hampton is an excellent running back. I think he is a round one kind of guy, just like Travion Henderson. The Texans, interestingly enough, had in some backs. They have shown interest in the running back position. Caleb Johnson from Iowa, who's not a first-round draft pick. They also had in Judgens from Ohio State, and they did have a Zoom with Travion Henderson, the Texans, so they have had some interest in the running back spot. But, there hasn't been anything where I thought they were using their first-round pick. I would rate this even lower than Nolen, the idea of them picking a running back in the first round. I know this is something that fans have kind of been interested in. Well, why can't we just get a running back? And we have Joe Mixon and another running back. And that's great, but someone's got to block for them. Remember what it was like, and I think everybody kind of has some memory of this game. When they played the Detroit Lions, Joe had nowhere to run. They were just running through these gaps. He was hit almost as soon as he got the football. There wasn't a lot of things he could do, and it doesn't matter how good Joe is if they don't block. So all these things are fun ideas. The skill players, if you're running a business, sure, it'd be nice if everybody could have a bunch of sports cars. But my analogy is you need some trucks.
Yeah.
You need some, real heavy duty, mauling type of guys up front. And I think that's what's going to take. You've got to address the trenches. They need to, look at the Eagles. Look how strong they are on the offensive and defensive line. They're the champs. It is a copycat league. Everybody wants to have good linemen. I know the Texans do too.
Yeah, and speaking of offensive line, that's where I go with the next one. Obviously, there's going to be a ton of offensive linemen in my top 10 targets for the Texans in round 1. I have Kelvin Banks so low on my list only because I don't know why. I just feel like the tackles are going to go earlier in this draft class. Since I've been covering, this is my 4th NFL draft that I've covered, Aaron. You've probably done twice as many than me. I feel like tackles always go earlier than they're expected. With Kelvin Banks, and some people might think he's a better guard in the NFL, but I just don't see the Texans being able to select Kelvin Banks at 25. Like, what do you think about this?
I'm not sure if he's still there. I think he could go higher than that pick. I know the Arizona Cardinals have met with Kelvin Banks. I think that he's going to have a pretty good upside. He's someone that he is local. It didn't work out for them, and I don't think it was because Kenyon Green was local because he was from Atascocita High School, which is in the suburbs of Houston. I don't think that matters that Kelvin went to Summer Creek and he went to Longhorns. Like, that's the same scenario. Of course, people will bring it up, but I think that they don't make evaluations that way. Just like, hey, we did it before and it wasn't so good. I think they evaluate the player, they evaluate the person. Kelvin's very mature, very good lineman. I think that, if they want him, they probably have to move up for him. And I'm just not sure if he's going to fall to the 25th pick. But I rate this higher than the first two as a possibility. Absolutely. This is like, if we're doing percentages, like 30 to 40%, maybe even 50%. And if he's on the board, that they would do it. If he made it to 25, I'll go up. I think 75%. They pick him if he's there at 25. And, the receivers, like Golden's gone. There's nothing really, that spicy left. And there's no sliding player that they just can't pass up. I think they turn the card in for Banks.
Yeah, and funny, great minds think alike. I knew we were good friends, Aaron, because the next guy on my list is Matthew Golden. And this is another guy, back-to-back Texas guys. I don't know if Golden makes there. You mentioned, earlier in our live show, you could see him going somewhere in the teens, right? Like 10 to 20. With the wide receiver room in this class and, the guys at the top, and I just don't think there's a ton of talent in this wide receiver class. I don't see how Golden makes it to 25 either, right?
Right. He's the fastest receiver in the draft, 4.29, legit speed, former UH Coug that really made it big once he transferred to Texas. And he's a deep threat. And I like a lot of things about Golden. I think he's going to be excellent in the pros. And, you saw on the screen there, low percentage of drops, so pretty good hands, good routes. And I think tougher than people realize as far as fighting through coverage and, taking hits when he has to make contested catches. I like him, and I think if you had a toss-up, and I don't think this scenario is going to happen, between Golden and Banks, I think you got to pick Golden. He's that talented. So, yeah, I'm going to go up to 80%. If he's there, they would turn in the card.
Wow, interesting. A little bit higher on Golden than Banks. Both these guys, though, I think the Texans would have to at least trade up to like 18, 19, or 20 to get Banks or Golden. Yep. My question to the audience out there, we have about 175 people watching live. If you're watching this on a later date, let me know in the comments section. Could you see the Texans trading up in round one? Aaron, how do you feel about that? You think we know behind Howie Roseman, I think Nick Caserio is one of the next up GMs who absolutely loves a draft day trade. Do you think the Texans could trade up in round one?
I could see it, yeah. And it only costs you, they have one of those extra third-round picks, so they could certainly do that trade and not have to give up a ton. But, with the other teams, obviously it's attractive if they just don't have a player they like. But finding a trading partner is always the tough thing, and finding someone just that is willing to move out of that spot thinking about depth. Because the Texans don't have a lot of starting jobs open, right? Mm-hmm. So what they really need more so than a bunch of picks to fill out the roster, they need quality players that are better than the players they currently have. How do you do that? Normally by drafting very high or drafting very smart. So move upward scenarios are attractive because they have a surplus of picks, because they already have a stacked roster. They've already drafted well. So can Nick Caserio afford to make some moves? Yes, but with everybody saying, and I think agreeing, that there's not that much sizzle in this draft, that there's only a few scenarios where you want to be aggressive, maybe we have less trades this year, because if you let the board fall to you, I think you'll find some pretty good football players. And, he emphasized today, he's like, if we pick at 25, if we do this, that kind of thing. And he lets everyone know he's open for business. And you've seen him before, especially 2 years ago, how much he's willing to trade and maneuver in the draft. But, when Nick has draft capital and when he has a roster that he feels pretty good about, like the way he does now, I think he's more prone to trades. Mm-hmm. That's what I would think his reaction would be, trying to think like him. And, as an aggressive younger general manager that, is not going to always stand pat and just let the board fall to him. I think he's fine with being patient and letting things play out, but there really isn't that much difference between the players that you might rank 20th and players you might rank 33rd that cluster of players, I think, is probably trading up. I don't know. I think like 30% chance that they trade up.
Yeah, and maybe they don't trade up, and I do think it would be maybe a little better for this team adding more depth to trade back in the draft, but I could also see them sticking at 25, especially if a guy like Emeka Egbuka is still on the board for the Houston Texans. Now, I might have moved him up a little bit from what you've told me here in the past couple, hours about Emeka Egbuka and the Houston Texans, but I think the fit really makes sense adding another weapon for CJ Stroud. What do you think about Egbuka at 25 for the Houston Texans?
A potential reunion between CJ Stroud and Emeka Egbuka, two former Buckeyes. I could see it happening. I think that the Texans certainly like him. I've heard some talk about him with Seattle. That's one of the franchises that's high on him. I would say it's a real clean pick. It's one of the reasons they didn't feel like they needed to have a 30 visit with Emeka. They had such a great visit with him, and he's very enthusiastic about wanting to be a Texan. So we'll see if he's the guy. If he's on the board and they've been wiped out at offensive line, sure, I could see them doing it.
All right, here we go. Next up on the board, and this is where getting a little bit more serious. Here's my top 5. Josh Simmons, offensive tackle from Ohio State. I honestly don't know where to go with Josh Simmons, right? Because that injury is serious. And maybe the Texans have a little bit of insurance because they signed a Cam Robinson in free agency, and they feel like, oh, we can get a guy like Josh Simmons and kind of groom him to be the left tackle of the future. What are you hearing around, draft circles around the league around this polarizing prospect, Josh Simmons?
Great upside with some concerns about his health and also maturity. And I think while he's an excellent football player, great prospect, I think some people are a little bit wary of him, and he's really a boomer bust type of pick. So, would it shock me if he was gone by the time they're on the clock? No, it wouldn't surprise me, but it is a serious injury, and I don't think he's going to be ready until training camp. And they didn't even bring him in, so that kind of tells me something that, maybe they're not that interested. So, why didn't he visit if they, wanted to ask more questions about the medical? So not flying Josh Simmons in, maybe they did some homework on him in some other kind of way. I know he did the medical recheck in Indianapolis, and everything looks good. The outlook's fine, but, maybe his freshman year, if you will, is kind of a redshirt year in the NFL.
Yeah, and I talked about on my show the other day that Josh Simmons, among, online mock drafts, was actually the most mocked player to the Houston Texans at 31%. Around all mock drafts that have been done in the past, I believe it was the past month, Josh Simmons was the most mocked person to the Houston Texans. I haven't really felt that made a lot of sense. Like, I'm kind of in the board of view of why would they not bring him in, especially with the medical history, if they're, going to draft him with a first-round draft pick. I don't think that makes sense.
Yeah, Jeremy, unless they don't want people to know. I don't know, but not every visit gets out there. I mean, I've been covering the NFL since 1997. Have I ever reported on a team I was assigned to cover all 30 trips? No, I don't even count them. But I think one year with the Ravens, I think I had like 25 or 26 of the 30. And I think this year I'm probably over 20, in addition to all of the local prospect guys, which was, somewhere around 25 that I heard about, which are just like your undrafted type of guys, like the running back, Josh Taylor from LSU is an interesting player, but, and they had the University of Houston quarterback, and they had some other guys like that. But yeah, no, I just think with Simmons, it does seem like you would want to logically have him in and get a good look at things. But, are they privy to enough medical information? I mean, sure. All the teams have the same ability to, get a update on him, and they have a great relationship with, Josh Simmons' agent, Drew Rosenhaus, so they can certainly talk to Drew about him. But yeah, the thinking is that Josh, with the upside he has, that someone's picking him in the first 15 picks.
Yeah. I think if the Texans go with an Ohio State lineman in round 1, I've been on the Donovan Jackson train for a while, and I might even have him a little higher up, but I wanted to take my bias out of it because I really like Donovan Jackson as a prospect. Gives you so much versatility, and I think it's just kind of fits what DeMeco wants in the locker room as well. Not only on the field, because everything that I've heard from Chip Kelly, the Ohio State, coaching staff, is that Donovan Jackson was one of the leaders in that locker room. And I think D'Amico Ryans, Nick Caserio look at those things. What have you heard, though, around Donovan Jackson?
Yeah, I'm hearing similar feedback. A really solid person. Of course, he is from Bel Air in terms of high school at Episcopal, but he's actually from Cyprus, so he's from the suburbs. And he does have that flexibility. He did well at left tackle when Josh went down. He picked up the torch and he ran with it. I thought he did a good job, but he's a prototypical guard, and he's not going to be playing left tackle for you. I know there have been some shorter left tackles in the days, but that's not necessarily what you want to do, to have a guy that's just under 6'4" playing left tackle for you. I would think that if you plug him in, that he becomes your guard, and very quickly I think he would become one of the starters, whether it's the right side or the left side. He played the left side primarily, so I would think he would become their left guard. If you're just trying to get your best five on the field, maybe it's Cam Robinson, Donovan Jackson, Jarrett Patterson, and then either Juice Scruggs or Ed Ingram. And to me, I would put Titus Howard at right tackle of that group. But and Trent Brown is also coming off a pretty big injury, so I don't think he'll necessarily be a starting candidate. He's a swing tackle, but if they have to, they could line him up out there. But yeah, Jackson to me is probably more likely to be a plug and play than a lot of these players.
Yeah, and next
I
up
see
on
the green. I saw it. I saw the green.
Yeah, there we go. And
the Bison.
You've been up and down on this guy with the Houston Texans and their interest in Grey Zabel. I think over the past week, it's been kind of a roller coaster for Zabel and the Houston Texans. What are your thoughts as of right now? Because I know we've talked a couple times and you were like, oh, I'm not sure if they're that interested. Oh, they're having secret visits with Grey Zabel where they're not really reporting that they're bringing him in. What are you hearing now about Grey Zabel possibly being a Houston Texan?
They thought that he was really impressive at all stages of the process: Senior Bowl, Combine, athletic, liked his size, liked the leadership. There's a lot to like about Grey Zabel. A lot of intangibles and good blocking technique. Yes, he's making a large leap from a smaller school, but I kind of feel like Nick Caserio's answer today about guys that aren't from Power 5, that it was interesting, that he was open-minded to it. This is a really clean prospect. I like the idea. I think it's something where, they can certainly do something with him. And I don't think it's a reach. I think that he's someone that they got to strongly consider. And they're probably one of his landing spots in the first round. So, I like the idea. I've kind of come around on it a little more and more, that Zabel is a possibility.
Yeah, I like Zabel. Obviously, he showed his stuff at the Senior Bowl, and the stories that I heard about people who, were at the Senior Bowl watching practice is that everybody kind of seemed like they were calling out Zabel, and he stood the test with all the guys there at the Senior Bowl, and that probably impressed a lot of people, namely Nick Caserio, D'Amico Ryans, this Texans coaching staff.
Interviews to things he did on the chalkboard with the teams also were, really off the charts. He was just a real plus guy, so like a team captain kind of person. I think he's their kind of player.
Yeah, and
lots to like about Zabel. They just have to decide. They think that his intangibles, his size, his athleticism, does that override the small school background, which you don't really like that. You don't like that when a guy hasn't played in the Big Ten or the SEC, and that's understandable. There's definitely a big school bias when it comes to the Texans. You look at the proliferance of Alabama and LSU and Ohio State, Notre Dame, etc. The list goes on and on. There aren't a lot of small school guys that Nick Caserio has been really enamored with and brought in. And, occasionally maybe if they were a free agent, like, E.J. Speeds from Charleston State, but basically they're going off of what he did with the Colts, not where he started his career in, Division II, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Next up on my list, and you'll see a theme in my top 5. I think the Texans are going O-line in round 1. I really do believe
you might be right.
I'm really just in between if they're going to go and prioritize a tackle or a guard. Now, if they do take a tackle, I think Josh Conerly Jr. from Oregon makes the most sense based on they're bringing him in for a visit. I think it kind of fits where he is a young guy who they can come in, kind of mold, maybe start at left guard and then kick him out to left tackle, or maybe just have him battle with Cam Robinson. What have you heard, though, about the Oregon prospect?
I heard he had a great visit with the Texans, and I heard Josh made a good impression. and he's someone that they liked what he did against Penn State. You've probably seen that game and how he performed against Abdul Carter. There's another player that we discussed earlier from Minnesota, also had a good game against Abdul Carter, Ursary from Minnesota. So it's not like Abdul Carter's unblockable, but then Conerly, I think, got some dinged a little bit at Senior Bowl by the speed of Mike Green, who's a very explosive edge rusher. But overall, a lot to like about Josh, very consistent lineman, and they like the attitude, they like the toughness. He's a big, strong guy. I think, some wonder, is he more suited to right tackle or guard than left tackle? He's a very, very good athlete. Is he a great athlete? It's kind of borderline, but Conerly, not a lot of people are mocking him into the first round. I'm hearing more second. So yeah, I don't necessarily think Conerly's the guy.
Before I get into my top guy, I have some honorable mentions, and it's funny that you mentioned Ursary. He's one of my honorable mentions that I could see the Texans taking. Also Colston Loveland, the tight end from Michigan. Running back Travion Henderson, which, like I said, I think I might crash out if the Texans take a running back at pick 25. Jaden Higgins, the wide receiver from Iowa State. Also maybe Jalen Noel, his teammate. And then Kenneth Grant. These are some honorable mention guys that I have. Before I get into my number one guy I think the Texans will take at pick 25, everybody at home, now we've crossed over 200 live people watching on YouTube. Shout out to everybody who joined the live show. Let me know in the comment section right now, before I release my number one guy to Aaron Wilson, who do you think are the Texans going to take at pick 25? Go down in the comment section, let your voice be heard, and shoot your shot. Let me know who you think it is, because personally, Aaron, I think it's Tyler Booker. I think Tyler Booker is a Texan. I think the Alabama prospect, from all my guys that went down to the NFL Combine and talked with him, and everything that I've heard around Tyler Booker, and especially the things that I've heard about him around the Alabama, locker room, and being one of the leaders in there and being the Will Anderson of the offensive line, I think Booker just makes too much sense for the Texans. That's such a big need at one of the guard spots.
Right, yeah, he's definitely a ready-made guard, and they do like the leadership, and he's gigantic. I see the listing here. I think it says 6'4", 5'8", 321, but he's played as heavy as 350. He's a real, road grader. I like what he had to say about wanting to make people basically tap out on the field and embarrass them and have that aggressive mentality, no sacks, and highly graded overall on all the analytics stages. But yeah, to me, I just wonder, generally, is it a good idea to draft someone that only plays guard? Should they be thinking about, the possibility of playing more than one position? Do I think in a pinch he could play right tackle? Yeah, probably. But yeah, this is something where it wouldn't surprise me if they did it. I don't necessarily that this is the greatest idea. And so, yeah, I'm going to disagree, which is good. We don't have to agree on everything. So yeah, even though I see the upside of it, I kind of see a downside to going with a pure guard at all, regardless of Booker or someone else. I'm more interested in them getting a tackle that can play guard, and then I think that increases the value. But, they may think differently. But, the last time they did pick a guard in round one, it didn't work out at all. They should have drafted Tyler Linderbaum from the Ravens. They'd have the center that they need. They still need the center, too. I mean, Jared Patterson, we think is going to be solid at center, but, solid, not dominant. Yeah. And I think it's interesting to see, because they've looked at other guards that are later available, guard center types like Luke Newman from Michigan State, and they're not going to draft only off of this visit list. They're going to expand that to several players, and that's happened every year that they've had the draft under Nick Caserio. But yeah, no, I'm a little less inclined. I've kind of waffled on this a bit since the Combine, and maybe they don't go Booker.
I could see it. Well, either way, I want to thank you, Aaron, for showing up to our live show, giving us a little bit of your wisdom. Make sure if you are watching this, if you're watching it live, if you're watching it on a later date, if you're not following Aaron Wilson on Twitter, are you even a Texans fan? That's my question to you. If you're not following Aaron Wilson on Twitter, you're probably not a Texans fan. Go hit him up at Aaron Wilson_NFL on Twitter. And Aaron, let him know about your YouTube channel, because I know you've been popping off with some videos. I've been watching them.
Yeah,
you have a lot of good insight.
I'm trying to build that. I guess we're one of the faster growing channels. We're up to 5,500. I started that in October, and it's been a real education. It's been a lot of fun for me, but I started off not realizing, oh, I need more longer videos. I'm doing these shorts. So I was just posting shorts all the time, and I was building my followers with some consistency. But, a lot of true pros of the YouTube game, like you have, taught me some things, give me some tips, and my wife's making these great thumbnails, and I'm just getting better at it. As far as I haven't even had a live show yet. I've been more just like I make videos here. This is the backdrop normally where I make the videos, and if I'm at the combine or if I'm at the stadium, making videos, and usually I talk for 12, 15, 20 minutes, and I'll go over a lot of topics, discussing some of the latest developments with the Texans. But yeah, please give me a like and subscribe at Aaron Wilson Sport, and it's going to just keep getting better. I'm going to keep growing the channel, and I'm at every practice. I'm at every game, home and road, and there'll be occasionally some exclusives in terms of interviews I do and things like that will happen on my channel because of the access I am privileged to have, and representing KPRC. And of course, I'm on Sports Sunday and other appearances with Randy McElboy and Ari Alexander, my colleagues at Channel 2, which is the NBC affiliate here in Houston, and proud to work for them. And everything I write is free. You can read everything absolutely free. No paywalls. I'm at www.click2houston.com. So please bookmark our Texans page. And yeah, I appreciate you having me on. I'm excited, and it was fun to do this. So definitely for anybody at home that thinks this is that easy, it's not. Because talking for a very long time, doing like a talk show, which is what we're having, essentially like radio, no, that's not easy. So for all the YouTubers out there, there's a lot of great ones that I see on the beat every day, and like the Landry Lockers and Cody Stutes and all the guys like Big Sarge. Yeah, everybody's trying to be a part of the YouTube conversation, this experience, and I'm kind of late to the game on it, but I'm enjoying it too, and diving into this and other social media. But yeah, it's fun. I mean, YouTube is really where it's at, and I would say for creators, it's the best place you could be right now.
Awesome. Yeah, well, if you need any of those links, I'm going to put it down in the comments section of this video.
You.
One more time, shout out to my man Aaron Wilson for coming on the show. All right, that's our first segment on today. Aaron, we still have time for a quick mailbag, correct?
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. I thought you were kicking me out.
No. That was just the end of that cut. I got, a little behind the scenes. My man Jack is going to cut up this video afterwards and put out some videos later on from our live show.
Got it.
So that was the first segment. The second segment we're going to do is a mailbag. We need more questions from y'all in the audience. There's over 150 people watching right now. Hashtag Texans, or if you want to skip the line like Joshua Stanley did, have it where it's 100% your question is going to be on the mailbag. Make sure you super chat so you can get to the front of the line. I kind of describe it as like a Disney fast pass if you want your question on there. But I've seen some good questions. I saw Mr. Optimistic, my guy. He was putting in some hashtag Texans questions. I also saw Stressins, my man Garrett in there was asking some good questions earlier. But we definitely need some more. So if you want to ask us anything around the draft, around the Texans, around anything you need, hashtag Texans, or you can super chat to get on the program. We're going to do our mailbag here in about 5 or so minutes. Don't want to keep Aaron way too long past his bedtime. But make sure you're using those hashtag Texans so we can get those questions in there. And then we'll answer your questions and then pop out for today's show. Jack, how are we looking on questions so far? Okay, we're a decent. We have a decent amount. Jack said we have room for a couple more questions. So if you have a really good question, if you want to ask us anything, go down there. Hashtag Texans in your comment, or like I said, if you want to skip the line, if you want to be one of the first people up in the mailbag, you can super chat to get on the show, just like Joshua Stanley did, which we can actually go to that one first for the mailbag as well. But no, yeah. Shout out to everybody on the live show. I haven't done a ton of live shows since the end of the regular season. I usually do my live shows for game days, like a game day-like experience where kind of giving you play-by-play around the games. And I want to do more live shows moving forward, but this is a good step, I feel like, with my man Aaron Wilson always holding it down for me. Big help. I think we should be about good. Yeah? All right, cool. We're going to hop into this Texans mailbag. throughout the entire mailbag show. Reminder, you can still get your questions in. All you got to do, hashtag Texans or Super Chat to get on the program. And, all right, Jack, here we go. Oh, Aaron, we good?
Yep, all set. Just was checking I get a lot of texts, and just I have to check. See if make sure I'm not missing anything. No breaking news. Yeah. Otherwise, I'd be tweeting.
Oh yeah. All right, let's get into this mailbag, and then we'll be on our way. All right. Oh yeah. No, you're good. All right, here we go. Welcome into Texans Today. I'm your host, Jeremy Chuggs, and we have a special guest, Aaron Wilson, on this mailbag edition of Texans Today. Reminder, all the questions asked is from our live show for April 16th, just a week, a little more than a week before the NFL draft. And if you're watching this live, hashtag Texans or Super Chat to get on the show. And you can Super Chat just like Joshua Stanley did. We talked about this earlier on the live show, Aaron, but I want to ask you just one more time. Do you get the impression the Texans will look at trading up for the right offensive line player in this year's draft?
I don't think they need to, but if they wanted someone like Kelvin Banks, they may have to move. So I would say kind of 50-50 on whether they would really feel a need to. Really what they're looking for is the quality player, not necessarily a bunch of depth and filling out the roster. They've got enough players. They need better players that are better than what they currently have. So that's the only reason I think why maybe if there's someone just coveted that you move. But a lot of these players, they're similar. We discussed a lot of them in the first half. There's not a great delineation between these offensive linemen. There's a gap, obviously, with Will Campbell at the top. But I feel like a lot of these players, they have similar qualities, similar testing, similar film. And I don't know that one is just like, oh, well, that's guy's so much better. They really need to move up for him. I would stay at 25 and just see what falls to them. I think they'll be happy that they didn't make a move.
Awesome. And we have another question coming in from Ezekiel Tovar. He says, what do you think is the most likely scenario the Texans go with in this draft? I'm guessing the first couple rounds. You don't have to give a specific player, but maybe position groups. What do you think is the most likely first couple picks for the Texans?
Offensive line and wide receiver. The only real wild card is some of these defensive linemen are so good that you might be tempted to delay on the receiver and pick a defensive tackle. And I think they're good enough defensive tackles that it may be tempting to them to go ahead and do it. I think they're fine, obviously, at the edge position. They're pretty stacked there with Danielle Hunter, Will Anderson Jr., but could they use another defensive tackle? Answer is yes.
And I do think defensive tackle, the D-line, might be a sneaky pick for the Texans early on in this draft. We have another question coming in. Do you think C.J. Stroud may be a little shell-shocked to start this upcoming season? Aaron, it's not a surprise, or it's not any, kind of secret that C.J. Stroud had a down year. I'm not going to say it was a sophomore slump, but it was definitely not as good as his rookie season. How do you think people around the organization, people who are close to this team, feel about CJ going into year 3?
I mean, they feel good about him. The fact is, I don't know if you can call it a regression, but he's the, product of his environment. What happened on the field? What was the environment like? Was it safe out there? Did they have a clean pocket? No, they didn't. He was sacked 8 times in the playoff game and hit 14 times. This is against the Chiefs. Sacked 11 times combined in the postseason, and then 52 times during the regular season. So, isn't any wonder that at some point he's getting rid of the ball, he's expecting hits, that sort of thing? Of course. Do I think he handled it in a manly fashion and was a stand-up guy about it? Absolutely. And he never threw his offensive line under the bus. He was great about it. But he definitely got the yips a little bit, and it's what would have happened to any quarterback. Doesn't matter. If that had been Tom Brady back there, the same thing's going to happen. Mm-hmm. You can't get hit that much. And I covered Brady games where he was playing against, like the great Ravens defenses, and when he got hit, he was worse than CJ was. There were games, there was a playoff game where he was absolutely terrible. And why? Because Terrell Suggs was all over him. If you're on the ground, it's hard to be a great quarterback.
I agree. And
hits make everybody on there.
It's kind of the battle that I face every single day working here at Chat Sports, because we have 30 other guys here who cover different teams, and they're all telling me CJ had a bad year last year. And I was like, you didn't really watch the games that closely if you think CJ Stroud had that bad of a year this past season.
Not his fault entirely. Was he perfect either? No. I mean, I think he probably should have sped up his process. I also think the play calling and the protection schemes are also culprits for it. It's a multi-layered question about CJ, and it's complicated. And, I've been writing about this since before the season ended and since the season ended. And I'm not giving him any excuses or any passes. What I would say is, though, what was he supposed to do? How would he make the leap? And he did lose some great wide receivers, Stephon Diggs and Tank Dell, and Dalton Schultz. And this probably doesn't get talked about enough, but I've said it. What a bad season by Dalton in terms of drops, in terms of blocking. The contract, if you talk about the offensive line, that investment in Dalton didn't look very good. That didn't go very well. So while he's, it's always guaranteed, so obviously he's back. That is a position they have not been able to upgrade just yet. So we'll see what happens. But in my opinion, what happened with CJ, it's very understandable. Doesn't make it great. But I mean, he didn't have an awful season. He battled. He did some good things. He had some good games. But the consistency, no, it wasn't there. But they never blocked for him. I mean, you go back and look at when did he have a lot of time. I mean, even like the Chargers game, that great broken play, he made that play. After him and Jared Patterson on the same page with the snap. But, that's him making a play, him scrambling around and finding Hutchinson. So, yeah, overall, I mean, when he had Nico Collins on the field, he was pretty good. When he didn't have Nico, it affected him greatly. That's his security blanket. That's who he likes to throw to the most.
Yeah. Chris Foles has this question for you. Could a team looking for a quarterback try to trade with the Texans at pick 25? It's been a popular, talking point of teams at the end of round one, maybe sneaking back up for a Jackson Dart, a Jalen Milroe, maybe even a Tyler Shuck. I don't know. What do you think? What have you heard about teams possibly trading back into round one? Maybe the Texans trading out of
It's an interesting question, Chris. I don't understand as a Texans fan why you would want that, but no, I'm a thumbs down on the likelihood. I love the idea. I think it's smart thinking, but as far as like whether it's something that I think they're these coveted quarterbacks and people just would love them and these guys are great, no, it's a hard pass for me.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, I don't think it's extremely likely, especially with the quarterback class this year kind of being down, right? Like this isn't one of the better quarterback classes that we've seen the past couple of years. I want to ask the folks at home, though, if a team does trade back into round one, we've heard a lot about the Browns, the Giants, the Raiders even. What team do you think it is? What team do you think is the most likely to trade back into round one? Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section. As we get into the next question from Matt, he says, with Nick Caley coming in, do we have any insight into the new blocking scheme and maybe some O-linemen in this draft that would fit it?
Right. They had linemen that fit a different blocking scheme, more of a straightforward one. But what is his background? It's zone. And he'll teach some of those concepts. And so that will be a part of it. They are going to have some outside zone things that are part of this offense. So, yeah, it's not going to be the Slowick offense for sure. It's going to be a mixture from people that I've talked to that have, been exposed to the offense, that have had, some teaching of the playbook, a mixture of the Sean McVay system and what Josh McDaniels was running years ago with the Patriots when Nick was there. So I'm expecting them to run the ball a lot. I'm expecting to have a pocket quarterback, and I'm expecting them to use tight ends more. I've heard a lot that they're going to use tight ends more, and they'll also that they will have a fullback in the offense. I've heard a few other notes just that, they're going to primarily feed Collins. If you look at the target-rich style of the Rams with Puka Nacua. So just think about, where he comes from. I think you're going to see a lot of those type of patterns. At the same time, Nick Caley has his own ideas. He's a smart guy, and he's worked really hard. You guys probably saw the article I did talking to his boss at John Carroll University when he was a student assistant, and he's the type that he's a real go-getter. I think he's going to be, very good at marrying the personnel to his scheme. But he's not going to just stubbornly run, well, this is what I run. I think he'll be flexible. But yeah, as far as the blocking scheme, I'm hearing about some zone concepts.
Yeah, and we have another question coming in from Big Bob Johnson. What a name there. Are there any player trades that could happen during the NFL draft?
Just lists.
Yeah, he just listed Tyreek Hill, Michael Mayer, Jair Alexander, Jalen Ramsey, Kirk Cousins, or Derek Carr. I mean, it's a lot of names for you, Aaron. Maybe if you just want to single
only
out
one makes any sense to me, the tight end, Michael Mayer, but I don't know how they would really accommodate that because of the guarantees they have in the Schultz contract. Mm-hmm. Unless you're like going player for player, trade tight end for tight end, something like that, which I don't think the Raiders are going to want to do. But Mayer, of course, had some personal family issues and was sort of on a leave from the team, so you might want to know more about that before you make a trade like that. But they don't need the corners, and they have Davis Mills as a good backup quarterback, and Cousins is very expensive. Definitely not for Carr. And then for Hill,
maybe pass really, the Texans. Do you think
he can't stay out of the headlines for a couple of months. I mean, he's having a tough time. They say he's not available. Yeah. Would they admit if he was? I mean, they admitted the Ramsey thing. Yeah. But yeah, I just don't see where would Ramsey play. Are you going to play him ahead of Kamari Lassiter in front of Jerry Stingley Jr.? Yeah. So what do you need him for? But yeah, Bob, great question, very valid. Not dunking your question, but yeah, I'm not feeling these ones. Maybe the tight end.
Maybe past the Texans, because I don't know if he's talking about the Texans per se.
Oh, just generally?
Yeah.
I mean, as far as guys that might get traded, Dallas Goedert's on the trade block for sure. Wow. Jalen Ramsey. I don't know if Cousins is getting traded just because of the contract. It's difficult to trade, or Carr. But, Alexander is definitely in play. And, Hill, despite what they said, do I think he's available for the right price? Absolutely. Mayer, I haven't heard as much about them being willing to move on. Obviously, they have a great tight end. That's the starter. But, yeah, Mayer would be someone. But, yeah, I figured Bob was mostly asking about the Texans. But, yeah, no, there's some trade scenarios there.
Yeah, I just thought because maybe the Kirk Cousins and Derek Carr, there's no way that happens with the Texans. But we have another question coming in from T. Hardinger. And also, I see a super chat from D'Angelo Jordan. You don't have a question in there, D'Angelo. If you have a question, use hashtag Texans down below. We'll put you up. But shout out to D'Angelo Jordan with the $10 super chat. The next question that we have up on the board, T. Hardinger, I could see them trading up twice to hit on a wide receiver or an O lineman. That's a lot of trading up. We talked about a lot of, possibility of the Texans trading in this draft. I mean, trading up twice, that seems like it would cost a ton, Aaron, right?
Seems excessive. I mean, do they need all these draft picks to make the team? Do they need the undrafted to make the team? No. I mean, they're looking for quality. So would maneuvering, if the players are truly much better, make sense. But just burning through draft capital to get players that are marginally better, perhaps, than, say, another player, like we were discussing some of these offensive linemen. What's wrong with the second round being where you got the offensive lineman if you got the receiver first? I don't think that's a problem, but they might see it much differently than me, and they do this for a living. But in my opinion, these offensive linemen, they can be acquired in round 2. So do you have to trade? No. It's if you have some compulsion, strong conviction that you should trade, then do it. But if you don't, why move more than once or move even at all?
Yeah, I can see that. Next question coming up from our friend Houston Streshens. Shout out to Garrett out there.
Our guy, Garrett.
We talked about this a little earlier. Obviously, we're filming this on Wednesday, April 16th. But he asked, Nick Caserio had a presser today. What was your biggest takeaway from that Nick Caserio presser?
Beyond that, he was a little sensitive about the offensive line questions because he got so many of them, and it got a little tiresome because he's obviously sincerely, earnestly tried to address the offensive line. It hasn't always worked in his favor. I think that I found him to be calm and confident and secure in his position. And just feeling good about the state of the team. He emphasized that multiple times. When it comes to what he was likely to do, he didn't offer hints, in my opinion, at all, other than they're going to keep putting resources into the offensive line. I found him to be, on certain things, just kind of what you would expect to hear, like in terms of why do you do a contract? Well, what's he going to say? That we didn't feel good about this. I wish I hadn't done that deal a week or two ago. No, I mean, it's just kind of a no duh kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
How's he supposed to answer these questions? So, my expectations for something like this isn't to get a lot of information. You notice that not one player was mentioned. So, some fans out there are like, why didn't they even ask about Kelvin Banks or Booker? The answer is going to be what you're going to think it's going to be. Yeah, there's a lot of good players, sure. We met him. I don't even know if they'd say we met him at the combine or something like that. I mean, just not necessarily a good use of your time. But was there any headline out of this? No, I don't think so. I mean, he wanted to create an impression that he was open to trades. Mm-hmm. When has he not done that? Every year he's done that.
Big trade guy. He's a huge trade guy. Next question coming in from Case KK. Hey, I think Jack Besh is super underrated. I do like the TCU wide receiver. Would you take Jack Besh or Donovan Jackson at 25 if the guys we think will be there aren't? Before you get into this, I don't think there's a world where Jack Besh goes in round 1. I mean, I might be totally off on this. I might be reading too much into the tea leaves in the latest mock drafts. I don't think there's a way that Jack Besh is a first-round pick. Maybe in round 2. I like Donovan Jackson at pick 25. I've been on the Donovan Jackson train for the past month or so, but I could see maybe Jack Besh being there as a round 2 target for the Texans at pick 58. What is your thought on this, Aaron?
I mean, Jackson a much higher probability than Jack Beck, but yeah, I understand the love for Jack Beck, and he's a good football player too, but yeah, Jackson. I mean, I think their board have to be pretty wiped out for them to pick Jackson at 25.
Wow, I thought the Texans might be a little more high on him, but obviously
this pure guard thing doesn't really do it for me. Yeah. I mean, they did this before, and guard is they can line up with Hunt Tomlinson and Ingram and or G Scruggs, but I just don't think necessarily guard is the premium position, and there's not this big hit factor of guards, and you look back in the history, like the drafting them late is a great idea. I think there are more important positions than guard.
Yeah, I do feel like some of the best guards in the NFL have been later round picks / tackles who have ended up moving in to guard. So I see what you're going with there, Aaron. We have another question coming in from Christopher Flores. I think we have time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions. This one from
That's right. Yeah, I've got time for a couple more. Yeah.
Cool. What team in the top 10 do you think will surprise people, and why will it be the Raiders? That's hilarious.
Interesting. He's already answered his own question. He thinks the Raiders. He's wondering about Shadeur Sanders. People wonder about the New Orleans Saints and Shadeur. People think about the New York Giants. I've heard he will not be a Pittsburgh Steeler. I heard that meeting did not go well. And that wasn't from someone telling me that, because this is always the assumption that it's because someone's trying to affect these boards. But somebody's picking a quarterback higher than expected, and I think the Saints are in play. They might be someone to keep an eye on. To me, Shadeur doesn't really have first-round traits, but I just wonder, is someone going to do it? And New Orleans seems to be a surprise spot for a lot of people.
Yeah, our Saints host here at Chat Sports has coined the phrase Shadorlands already. So safe to say he's pretty high on Shadeur at 9. I don't see. I mean, I think he's a good quarterback, Aaron, but I don't see him being a top 10 value quarterback. Right? I see much more likely a team either trying to trade back or trade back into round 1 to get Shadeur. Or am I totally off on that?
There's no guarantee he goes in the first round, but stranger things have happened. Yeah, I think he's a polarizing guy. He's a good guy. He's a nice guy, but he's not everybody's cup of tea. Just in terms of even asking so many questions and kind of challenging the teams a little bit in some of the interviews. But it's not like he's like a bad guy. He's a good guy, and he had a good career. But not everybody wants to deal with the Deion Sanders experience. I think it's a little overblown, but it's the expectation that he's going to be this meddling dad. I have a feeling he's going to be very respectful of the teams and not step in unless he thinks there's a serious problem. But he's going to let Shadeur, sink or swim for the most part on his own.
Yeah.
Because that's what he should do. And I think Deion understands the team concept, understands how organizations operate. But yes, the perception is there for sure. And it's part of, along with the lack of athleticism and arm strength, things that do affect Shadeur Sanders' evaluation, his grade.
I want to add on one more part of this question to you because I love the Shadeur Sanders talk, Aaron. Is there a world where a different quarterback goes before Shadeur? Do you think there's any way that Shadeur isn't the second quarterback taken in this year's draft?
It's unlikely, but if someone was going to leapfrog him, I think, there's been some late buzz on Slough. It's interesting to see that, but, I don't think that should be the way it is, but yeah, that's been coming up lately. And also some love for Jackson Dart. Jackson is also a kind of wild, flamboyant style of quarterback and good athlete, but these guys don't scream first round to me. And I just wonder, is he going to be overdrafted?
Yeah, I could see that. We're going to end on this one because I actually think it's a fun question, and it's from one of my most loyal watchers, Rhino Jimenez. He says, "What's up, Chuggs? What's up, Aaron?"
Never heard that one before.
Where are y'all watching the draft, and what are your top 3 draft day snacks? Please like, share, and sub. And that actually goes for my channel and Aaron Wilson's YouTube channel. Make sure you're liking, sharing, and subscribing to both of our channels.
By the way, I have a membership club too. Yeah, join my membership club. Yeah,
hey.
Good question. You want to go first?
Okay, so I'll be live for the draft here at the Chat Sports Studios with some of our main channels. The Texans channel is one of the smaller ones. I also produce a ton here at Chat Sports, so I'll be here, but I'll be making a ton of draft content for the Texans. After each pick, I'll be making videos, grading the pick, and kind of breaking down each one of them. My top 3 snacks, though, that's a little bit more pretentious. I think I would go. You got to go something salty. So I like the peanut butter combos, like the peanut butter pretzels. I'm a good sucker for some peanut M&Ms. And actually, shout out to producer Jack, the guy who's pressing the 1s and 2s today. Our draft day tradition is every draft, his mom gets a ton of crumble cookies, and nothing's better than some nice cookies during the draft, some cookies and milk. But those are my top 3. What about you, Aaron?
Yeah, they're more of the entree category. That's what I tend to concentrate on. Like some pizza or wings. I like both of those. I'm fine with like a cold cut sandwich. If they have the Italian cold cut, it's my favorite. Texans, if they're listening, I like that one. And yeah, I stay away from sort of the dips, the chips and salsa kind of thing. I do like that normally, but when I'm covering the draft, I really am kind of locked in because I have a lot of tweeting to do, and I do tweet and tip a lot of picks. So it's tough for me to really eat when the draft is on. More just like drinking some iced tea or some water, and occasionally I like some popcorn or trail mix. Those are a couple of my faves. But you just got to keep your hands real clean when you're typing a lot. So that's sort of my pro tip on being a reporter, and also I have to have my phone going and all those things. But yeah, generally the idea is to eat before the clock starts, and then if you need to during one of the quick breaks, grab some more food. But it's very sedentary, and one of the other things I always advise people: you don't want to eat too much. You can become really sluggish, and you're just literally sitting for hours and hours watching the draft. And as exciting as it is for some, I've done a lot of drafts. My first draft I covered was 1997, and that was the Jacksonville Jaguars. So, I mean, it's exciting. It represents hope for the franchise, lifeblood, all that stuff for the fans. But at the same time, yeah, just as far as functionally what happens, I mean, literally, you are sitting and watching the television and the tweet deck and your phone, and that's what a lot of this job is. So yeah, you just have to be disciplined and be able to lock in, just like you, to be able to talk for a long amount of time, not or get off topic or lose your energy. And that all those things, it's what it takes. But I'd be happy with some pizza, some good pizza, some wings. Those are some things I like. No soda.
No soda at all. Well,
no sodies.
I think we're good on the cut there, Jack. I appreciate you coming on, Aaron. Once
yeah,
again.
absolutely. Thanks for having me.
I do know now that during the draft, I'm gonna try to keep queso dips away from the electronics. Queso and phones do not mesh pretty well. But I really do appreciate everything you've done for me, helping me out as I've been kind of growing this Texans channel. You've been a really good helping hand / somebody who I can kind of go to and, ask some clarification on some things. You really helped. I know me.
Anytime. You always have great questions. You do a great job with this channel. And that's one reason I was happy to come on when you asked me, and honored to do it. This is something where, I don't pretend, like I said, to be a YouTube expert. I'm at heart, I'm an old newspaper man, and I, made the transition to television and radio and social media, and now YouTube is like this new frontier. I don't know if I'll conquer it, but I want to get good at it and keep growing my channel. But thanks for everyone that's subscribing. I appreciate it. And I'll be working on my own video with some takeaways from today and some other tidbits about the Texans and their draft plans.
Awesome. Well, one more time, Jack, if we could, I have his link at the top. If we could spam Aaron's Twitter link, like I always say, I always tell my friends, if you're not following Aaron Wilson on Twitter, you're probably not a Texans fan, because if you want the latest up-to-date news and information around the Texans or the NFL, because, I told my coworkers that, hey, I'm going live with Aaron Wilson next week. They're like, oh, Aaron Wilson. Speaking of TweetDeck, we usually have you lined up on our TweetDeck.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Twitter's a lot of fun. I'm getting close to 110,000. I've been kind of in the 109 for a while. It's funny. A lot of people have left Twitter/X, and they're on some other social channels, but it's still my favorite one that I like to use. And probably second is Instagram. But it's interesting because I think sometimes you just lose followers because they're just leaving. Like, why do they unfollow? Well, I don't think they just unfollowed. I think they may have just ended their account, and it's been choppy, right? We've had some performance issues first day of free agency, and Elon has done some other things with the channel, and then I'm not into the politics thing, so I don't talk politics. I'm just sports, but I'm there for sports news, and it's kind of tough, but it's interesting. But I appreciate, I'm still getting my monetization as a ex-creator, and so Elon has not bounced a check yet, so there's still something in it for me to be. You wonder, why do you tweet so much? What's with all the hashtags? Yes, there's money on the line. Well, not big money, but there's something there. I think if you're going to be tweeting anyway, you might as well get paid for it.
Before I let you go, I'm gonna give you the last 30 seconds. I'll let you kind of preview what you have coming up and everything like that. But I did want to have producer Jack was talking to me before we went live. He said that he used to work with one of your coworkers. Who was it, Jack? Ari Alexander. Ask him about Jack.
Ari, shout out to Ari. He's just texting. He's texting me. He wants to know when we're going to interview Jaden Blue. So I got text from Ari. Ari, you're in here. I'm working on it. We're trying to set something up with Jaden Blue and something with Matthew Golden. So we'll see if we can get some interviews here late in the week. And Golden seems like a go. Blue seems like a go. We're just trying to pick out a time. But Ari. Yeah. So what's your colleague's name so I can tell Ari that I spoke to him?
Tell him Jack Lauderay said hi. You said,
Jack. How do you spell his name?
He said he interned with him. Last name Lauderay. Is it L-A?
Jack Lauderay.
Yeah.
Okay,
L-A-U-T.
Cool. At Channel 2?
Mm-hmm. Oh, wait, no.
Okay, cool.
Oh, no, in Tucson. He said he interviewed with
He's very proud of his work in Tucson. He was a crusading reporter there. Him and Sean Miller duke it out, those guys. And, he was a guy covering the Wildcats and high school football, like Roy Lopez. He covered Roy in high school.
Always got to build those connections here in sports media.
He's great at baseball, too. Like, he's really plugged in Major League Baseball reporter in Astros.
And Jack Lauderay, our baseball guy here at Chat Sports. So, not a coincidence.
Hey,
I should invite.
I would recommend that, since we're connecting people here, invite Ari on to your baseball channel. And I think hopefully he can do it.
All right, Jack's giving me a little nod back here. I'm going to let you have the last 30 seconds of the live show.
Yeah,
we're going to let you kind of promo
go.
what you have going up, and then after Aaron's done, we're going to end the live show. Thank you to everybody in the chat. Thank you so much to Aaron Wilson. The floor is yours.
Right. Thank you, Jeremy. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I am working on a YouTube video of my own. I'm going to try to post it earlier so I can have some time to go to the gym later tonight. And that's one of my pastimes, that and television, hanging out with my wife. I am working on some articles, some more coverage of today's press conference. We have a couple of pieces up today, including Donovan Jackson's visit, Kenneth Grant's visit, an update on Tank Dell, and an update on their philosophy about negotiating and rewarding deals for players like Derek Stingley Jr., Jalen Petrie, and Nico Collins, most recently of their homegrown draft picks. And yeah, I would expect some more coverage. I have a feature coming up on Upton Stout, who is from one of our local high schools, North Shore, and great player at Western Kentucky. So some coverage coming up of him. I read the Texas State quarterback, and I've got sort of juggling a lot of content. So I'm excited and hope to bring it all to you on Twitter/X, www.click2houston.com, and more in-depth videos at Aaron Wilson Sport on YouTube.
Well, one more time, thank you so much for joining us, Aaron. That's going to end our live show. Once again, I appreciate you. I know you're a very busy man, taking some time out of your day. I really do appreciate it, Aaron.
Absolutely. We'll do it again soon.
Awesome. All right. Until next time, I've been Jeremy Chuggs, Aaron Wilson. Thank you so much for joining Texans Today.